Shalom, shalom, shalom. First and foremost, I do give all honor and all praises to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Bikahak Next, double honors to the elder apostles and bishops of Great Millstone who rule well, whom I've learned this 100% truth. Salutations to the hopefully elect who are scattered in the four corners of the earth, including the speckled birds. Shalom to the sincere sisters who are listening and learning in silence and keeping the order to the best of their ability. Shalom, my brother Kapasha, Tabernacle 4443, Raleigh, North Carolina Church, coming to you once again with a brief lesson, Lord willing. This lesson will be edifying. I pulled up some precepts and some information, precepts on watching for riches in Chat GPT, which is a good source of information. You just have to pick the bones out of it, make sure, because it goes off a little bit, but nonetheless, I'm going to read some of the precepts that I found. I'm going to the book of Ecclesiasticus, known as Sirach, chapter 31, which reads, watching for riches consumeth the flesh, and the care thereof driveth away sleep. Yeah, you could spend your life, working. You can work yourself to death. I had an associate of mine. He had so many things going on. He had businesses and, about 2 or 3 businesses going on, and he ended up working himself to death. I think I believe he had a massive heart attack because he was always, on the go. Man, chasing that bag, chasing that money. Got to be careful, Israel. We're not to be occupied in earning, in riches and things of that nature. The Bible said, love not the world and the things that are in the world. It means money, material possession. Let me get that real quick since I brought it up. That's 1 John, right? 1 John 2 and 15. The Lord says, love not the world and the things that are in the world. You see, lust of flesh, because it says here, 1 John 2 and 15, it says, love not the world, neither the things that are in the world. If any man love the world, the love of the Father is not in him. So don't seek after riches and money and things of that nature, material possessions, because it will consume all your time, and it will rob you of your sleep too, as it says in in the precepts that I have. Let me get it. It says here. Let me read on. It says, 1 John 2 and 2 and 15 reads it. From the top it says, love not the world, neither the things that are in the world. If any man love the world, the love of the Father is not in him. Because you're not seeking Yahweh Shem Shai. You seeking the things of this world. You want to heap unto yourself great possessions, homes, cars, and you're spending your time in attaining these things, and these things takes a lifetime sometimes, and then you find yourself old and worn out, or having an early death. You see, it says here 16. It says, for all that is in the world, the lust of the flesh, and the lust of the eyes, and the pride of life is not of the Father, but is of the world. See? And we got to understand that this world is passing away, as it reads in the next verse. And the world passeth away, and the lust thereof. But he that doeth the will of the Most High Power, Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, abideth forever. You see? You want to do works that's going to be lasting. You don't want to do works. You don't want to have your works burn up, because everything in this world, it's going to get burned up. All your material possessions, especially right here in America, and the riches of the kings in those other countries, they're going to come to us, the Israelites, you so-called Negroes, Latinos, Native American Indians, and it's going to start with the elect of Israel who are going to receive these things. Salakia. Now let me read this again in the Apocrypha. All right, it says, watching for riches consumeth the flesh. You see, wear you out. You see, next thing you work. You work so hard, you throw your back out. You always exhausted. Falling asleep at the wheel and things of that nature, and end up in a car accident and things of that nature. Watching for riches consumeth the flesh, and the care thereof drive away sleep. Let me get this in here. Get a precept in the chat GPT here. It says, watching over riches can consume a man's time and keep him from rest. That's right. You see? That's why we shouldn't do that, And the hope, if you are hopefully elect Israelite man, take this wisdom in consideration, because you need this wisdom in order to, in order to live in this world. It says here, verse 2 reads, constant concern over wealth can disturb sleep, and it does. You're not going to get as much sleep as your body needs. Your body has to sleep a certain amount of hours. Sometimes you got men that sometimes they don't need any more than 3 or 4 hours of sleep. You see, and then you have people that need 5, 6, 7, 8 hours of sleep. But you don't need to be spending your time thinking about riches and material things. You see, that's the point of it. It says, watching care will not let a man slumber. You're not going to sleep because your mind is always busy. It's never shutting down because your mind is on riches. And then also, too, it'll take you away from doing the ministry of Yahweh Ba'ashem Al-Shai. You see, when you take your hand off the plow and you chase out the things of this world, you're doing a disservice to yourself. Your spirit is going to die. The Lord take his spirit away from you and cause, and cause much havoc to come upon you. You see, you don't want that. You don't want that smoke. You see, it says here, watching care will not let a man slumber, as a sore disease break his sleep. You see, because you're always thinking about how I'm going to get this deal done, how I'm going to get that car, how I'm going to get this home. If I work 2 or 3 jobs, when you should be studying, fasting and praying, doing things, that's beneficial to your spirit, to your soul, that it is pleasing to Yahweh Ba'ashem Al-Shai. It says here, verse 3 reads, the rich hath great labor in gathering riches. You see, together. You're going to do a lot of working. You see, it's going to consume all your time. And when he rested, he is filled with his delicates. You see? All right, let me get this in the chat GPT. Let's pull this up again. This is just something earlier this morning. It says, constant concern over wealth can disturb sleep. A rich man who labors to increase his possessions can become consumed by wealth. You'll be consumed because you have gotten greedy. A decent home, a decent ride, or whip, whatever you want to call it, it's not good enough for you. You got to have a particular type. You want to be impressive, so therefore you're going to work hard and spend many hours on jobs or different jobs. so you can attain the wealth, that you desire. You see, it says here, verse 3, a rich man who labors to increase his possession can become consumed by his wealth, right? Matthew 6, let's go to Matthew 6, 19 and 21. Let's get that. I'm gonna get that. Matthew 6, 19, 21. I'm gonna get it in my King James Version, Bible, KJV, Matthew 6. It says 19 and 21. It says here. It says here, the heading of it, it says, teaching on treasures in heaven, in which where our mind's supposed to be doing this ministry. 16, 21, it reads, I'm gonna start with 19 to 21. I'm gonna go to 19. It says, lay not up for yourselves treasures upon earth, where moth and rust doth corrupt, you see, and where thieves break through and steal, you see. But lay up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where neither moth nor rust doth corrupt, and where thieves do not break through nor steal. For where your treasure is, there will your heart be also. You see, that's what that's what the hopeful elect men out here saying. Do this ministry, work out your soul salvation with fear and trembling. That's your treasure. And it's the fear of Yahweh B'Shem Al Shai. Not taking your hand off the plow. Feeding his sheep. These are the real riches. This truth. Knowing these prophecies that are taking place, this is the real truth, Israel. You see, not working a job, many jobs or long hours, ridiculous hours on the job just to attain a pile of money in the bank or to build up your 401k and things of that nature. That time is, it's over. All of these, the economy is getting ready to crash. You see? So don't pursue these type of things, All right, it reads on, it says, let's go here. It says here, let's go. We say money itself isn't the sin, being consumed by money, you see, but being consumed by money and making riches your priority is the danger. You see? All right, it says here, the dangers of trusting in riches. That's verses 4 through 7. It says, verse 4 reads, the person who works to become rich may struggle and become exhausted because you're going to deplete all your energy. You see, you're going to wear your body down because you're not sleeping. Your body's not restoring itself, healing itself. So you're going to work yourself down and you're going to be subject to diseases, illness, sicknesses, and things of that nature. You're going to break down your immune system and such. So therefore, you might pass away from some illness or sickness or disease because your body's not, having enough sleep. And once, and also too, if you're pursuing money and riches, you're not going to be eating right. You're not going to be exercising, and more importantly, you're not going to be getting the proper amount of sleep. So therefore, your body's going to break down on you. You see, over money, over material possession. You see, it says here, whoever follows after wealth can be, verse 5 reads, whoever follows after wealth can be deceived by it. And you are being deceived by it, thinking that you're going to, use somebody important because you got enough money to buy, the things that you desire to buy, or the next man cannot afford to buy. You see, your home is bigger. or your car is more expensive, things of that nature. It says here, it says, those who love gold may eventually fall into trouble, and you will fall into trouble because, you know, if your neighbor knows that you have these things, or some scam artists or some con artists know that you have things, they can steal it from you or break into your home. You see, all these things that you'll have to guard, you have to spend your time trying to protect the wealth, trying to keep it. You see, but it says here, verse 7 says, gold can become a stumbling block to those who pursue it excessively, because it will. Because you're not going to be putting the time in trusting in Yahweh Hashem Shai. You see? Or the time in to learn, about his laws, statutes, and commandments, and how to conduct yourselves and to fear him properly. You see? Your mind is going to be on getting more and more and more and more. You see? Work, 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 work. You see? And it says in 1 Timothy, let me get that. It says 1 Timothy, let me get that. All right, 1 Timothy, 1 Timothy 6 and 9. Past 1 Timothy 6 and 9 reads, but they, it says here, but they that will be rich fall into temptation and a snare, and into many foolish and hurtful lusts, doing things that you wouldn't ordinarily be able to afford, if you didn't have the money or the resources. But now that you do, more temptations are going to come upon you, Israel. You see, you're going to find yourself, ordinarily you wouldn't, snort coke, or get high or overindulge in alcohol or whatever, or weed or whatever, because, you don't have the finances anyway. See, but you will be more tempted to do these things, you see, or some other wickedness, you see, going to parties or going places and, getting involved in other false, doctrines and things of that nature, because you got the, the finances, you got the resource to travel or to go to these type of events and things of that nature. You see, it says here, but they that will be rich fall into temptation and a snare, and into many foolish and hurtful lusts, which drown men in destruction and perdition. And that's what happens to many of our people. They chase that bag, and they get money or resources, and then therefore they go in a destructive way. You see, they turn away from Yahweh B'Shem Shai. And that happened to us. That happened to all of Israel. Every time the Lord blessed us, we got fat and kicked, as it says in, I think it's Isaiah. Is it around the first chapter? I'm not sure. But anyway, it reads on in 1 Timothy, let's see, 1 Timothy 6 and 10, it reads, for the love of money is the root of all evil, which while some coveted after, they have erred from the faith and pierced themselves through with many sorrows. And that's why it will bring many sorrows, because you'll end up yielding into those temptations, you see? So, hey, be careful not to watch for riches. You see? Stay humble. just have enough to pay your bills, you know, but you don't want to be broke down and poor either. But the Lord got his elect, you see? So, Lord willing, you will edify to some degree. I'm going to end it right there. But before I end it, I must give all honor and all praises to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Rikah HaKodash, double honors to the elder apostles and bishops of Great Millstone, who rules well, from whom I've learned this 100% truth. Salutations to the hopefully elect. Shalom.